Okay, it's Thursday, and it's Erev Rosh Chodesh. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Exciting time. Kislev is a Chassidish month, if anything. There's a lot of Chassidic holidays in the month of Kislev. And it's nice because it comes after Cheshvan, which we call Mar Cheshvan, which literally means the bitter month of Cheshvan, bitter Cheshvan, because we're bitter about no months, as we explained. No holidays, as we explained last time. Also, it's bitter because it came after the month of Tishrei. Tishrei was super fun, super busy, super exciting. And Cheshvan starts to get cold and bitter. But now we're moving into the bright month of Kislev, where we have Hanukkah at the end of the month. Then we have the Chassidish Yom Tiv of Yutes Kislev, which is called 19th of Kislev, which is the Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus. And what's unique about almost all of our classes, pretty much, I would say every single one, is that there's always Chassidus. I always bring in Chassidus, or the other rabbis and the Rebbetzins bring in a lot of Chassidus, which I think is a fantastic element to every class. Something very practical, very spiritual, but yet very practical, very grounded. And we have Tes Kislev, which is before you Tes Kislev. So tonight, Rosh Chodesh, maybe just to share a little bit of laws of Rosh Chodesh. Erev Rosh Chodesh is called Yom Kippur Katan. It's like a day of Yom Kippur. A lot of people fast on Erev Rosh Chodesh. In a way there's many reasons, but one of them is to go into the Yom Tiv correctly. See, if you notice, we call it Rosh Chodesh instead of Tchilas HaChodesh. What does Rosh mean? The Rosh means ahead. Ahead is where everything, that's where the entire body operates. Everything operates out of the head, the brain. It's not the beginning, it is more than that. It is the operation center. Your feelings, something's wrong, something's going on, your foot hurts. It really doesn't hurt in your foot, it hurts in your brain. The brain is the control center, it's the message center, it's where you interact with the outside world, outside of you. That's where growth takes place. Spiritual, mental, physical growth. And so the Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month, the head of the month is really what's called the head of the month, is very important. And we try to go in the right way, which means preparing ourselves. And learning Torah is a great way to prepare oneself, obviously. It's probably the best way. Very nice. Glad that you all are on before Rosh Chodesh Kislev. And we'll talk a little bit more about Rosh Chodesh Kislev tomorrow. But today is the Siddur class, and I want to focus on the Ashrei. The Ashrei is something which most people are familiar with out of the prayer book, mainly because there's a good song with it. Ashrei Yoshvei Veisecha. What is the Ashrei? And we'll analyze maybe line by line what makes the Ashrei unique and practical, and why is it chosen to be said by the 2 times in the morning. We say it in the Shacharis prayer 2 times, and then we say it at Mincha 1 time. Well, the rabbi said, the sages said that whoever says Ashrei will merit to go to Olam Haba. Now, what is Olam Haba? If you remember from one of my quizzes, it says that all Jews will have Tchias HaMesim, revival of the dead. Sometimes the revival of the dead is called Olam Haba. And sometimes Olam Haba is called Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Olam Haba literally means the world to come. Which one is it? Is it Gan Eden, or is it the revival of the dead, which will take place after Mashiach's arrival? Not exactly sure if it's right after. It's a machlokes. It's up for debate whether it happens right away or it takes time. I believe most opinions believe it doesn't. It takes place. It could take place right after Mashiach's arrival. Anyway, Olam Haba is in this case refers to Gan Eden, where when the soul leaves the body, it moves on to the next world. Now we've spoken about there's a certain purification process that takes place on the soul, because the soul was so attached to the body, it collected so much materialistic schmutz. I don't want to say schmutz. It's not necessarily something negative. It's just when you go into another world, you travel into another world. So I've read. I've never actually been there. You have to have the right suit on. You have to have the right clothing on. You have to have the right. You have to be able to approach it properly. Otherwise, it'll be what's called a chatzitza. There'll be a intermediary between you and your oxygen, so to speak. There's oxygen in the ocean, but if you're not equipped to be able to get access to it, then you're not wearing the right. It's not going to end well for you. So the same thing in the next world. We don't want to. On the other hand, also here, if you have an oxygen tank, you're walking around with an oxygen tank, and that's the only way you say I'm going to breathe. Eventually, you're going to run out of oxygen in the oxygen tank, and it won't be good for you there. So you have to have the right materials. It wasn't the best example, but it's the one that just came to mind. So moving on to the next world, you have to go through. We all basically go through Gehenna. Now, Gehenna is not negative, and I know we try to avoid Gehenna, but often it's a mistranslation. It's translated as hell. Fine, you can call it hell, but it's not anything that the media portrays or you've read, where there's fire and devils and all these different things, no such thing. Number one, it's not physical. There's no physical. There's no fire. There's no pain, because the pain is something on a physical element in the physical world. You're moving out of the physical world. So there's no fire, there's no hell, there's no screaming, there's none of that. It doesn't exist. There's no body. The reason why perhaps it was a misconception is because we borrow a lot of terms, we borrow a lot of words, and we say that Gehenna is like fire. It's hot, it's fire. But why do we say that? Because what is fire? Fire in the process of koshering, yes, when you kosher a pot, a pot becomes not kosher. So you cooked some bacon in there by accident or whatever, or some milk and meat fell in there. So you got to put it on the fire. Does the pot feel any pain when it goes through? When the fire is underneath it? No, it doesn't go through pain. You're purifying it. You're koshering it. You're getting rid of that unwanted substance. So we say fire because that's what's unique about fire. Fire koshers things. So the same thing when we say you go in Gehenna in the next world, there is it's fire. What does it mean fire? It doesn't mean there's a little fire. It just means there's a purification process that takes place. We've spoken about that, I believe, in a few parshias ago. Now, there are certain things which purify a person in this world. You don't have to wait for Gehenna to have that process. And the reason why you kind of want to bypass that process is because what do you need to waste time for? Whatever time is in the next world. Well, I think it actually is. There really is time. Because it says a person goes for no more than 11 months through Gehenna. Even the worst of the worst only go through 11 months of Gehenna. And that's why we say the Kaddish prayer for 11 months, as we've spoken about in the past. The Kaddish prayer assists in the elevation process. We say it 5 times a day, corresponding to the 5 levels of the soul. So each of the 5 levels will also be elevated. We know Kaddish is connected with Amud. Kaddish is like a pillar, just like a pillar connects the bottom to below. That's what it does. It pushes you up. But we say it no more than 11 months. And then we say it once again on the anniversary, because the elevation takes place every time on an anniversary of a passing. And that had to get into when we spoke about how time is not linear, rather time works in a spiral. So you revisit the spiritual energy every year and on an elevated state. We won't get into that right now. You can see earlier classes about that. So there are certain things that will help you get into purify the soul, so to speak, or make your soul less materialistic, less physical, and therefore will bypass the process quickly. And where are we going? Going deeper into God's essence, where it was before, and not only where it was before, but it's sort of in an even deeper place within God, until Mashiach's arrival, until the revival of the dead, when the soul will return back into the body. There's a bliss, a certain bliss. Eden means bliss. Gan Eden means the garden of bliss. Now that really was a place, but that place also exists, like everything else, on a spiritual level. And we're trying to, the soul wants to go back to that place. That's its home. That's where it feels comfortable. That's why you feel no menucha. Person never feels satisfied or comfortable in this world. It's impossible. You have all the money, all the love, all the conditions and environment are conducive to have, very nurturing and whatever, but nevertheless, a soul will never feel satisfied in this world because it doesn't belong in this world. It's an alien. It's an alien in this world, really. Only back in the spiritual world, in the world of Gan Eden, will it feel rest. Now, there are certain times when the soul could feel at home, back to where it was. And that's when we do mitzvahs, because a mitzvah, the soul feels, what are mitzvahs? Mitzvahs come from God's attribute of ratzon, of will, desire. Chassidus explains that desire is an essential attribute, meaning it's in the essence. And the soul can connect to God's essence. That's where it came from, when doing a mitzvah. That's a unique trick that God was able to do. That's what's unique about mitzvahs. Now, what happens when the essence is staring you in the face, but you're not a vessel for it, we can't appreciate it. So while we're in bodies, we don't appreciate the mitzvahs. But what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? What happens when we leave Gan Eden? And really, when we leave this world and go into Gan Eden, and even more so when we are our souls return to our bodies, in what's called Tchias HaMesim, it's often mistranslated as reward. You see the reward for the mitzvahs that you did. You see the reward for the study of Torah. But let me tell you, we're not children. Yeah, we're not like into candy. Yeah, we like candy, but we're not really into candy. At a certain point, you grow out of reward. What it's really trying to say is, it says you see the reward for that which you have done. The reward of the mitzvahs. But the reward is, what is the reward? The appreciation of the mitzvah. You'll be able to see what you actually accomplished, what we actually accomplished at that time, or what we're still accomplishing. And you'll appreciate who you are in your essence. And we'll appreciate everything because we'll appreciate godliness. We'll see things through God's perspective. Now, it never ends, constantly keeps going. But we'll be able to experience the physical body will be so refined by then. Wouldn't be nothing more than you'll see how the physical body itself expresses God's essence. And that is the reward that is waiting for us. It's not really a reward, but it is a reward. It's a reward, meaning this is the consequence of your effort. Now, again, all these things take a process, it seems, from the Torah. And there are certain things you can do now to really excel the process, like we said before. Now, saying the Ashrae somehow excels the process. And I think we're going to get into a little bit, what does that mean? Is it just saying the words, or is there an action attached to it? Is there some sort of effort that we have to put in beyond just saying the words? And spoiler alert, yes, it's saying the words as well as doing some sort of action. But it's a blueprint. It tells you what to do. Now, the Ashrei is a Psalm 145, written by King David. King David, what's the idea of a king? A king is the rallying point. He's the one who really is the gem, the focal point of the nation. The king has nothing of himself. He gives it all to the people. Now, we see that expressed in the fact that a king, first of all, you see it very practically when England went to go vote whether to remove the monarchy or not, to have the monarchy. I mean, just takes up resources. I mean, what does she do, to be honest? Queen Elizabeth. She doesn't really do much, but she's nevertheless, they all, I don't know, the overwhelming majority of the nation, of the monarchy, voted that she should stay in, because there's a certain pride. There's a pride and there's an energy and there is a what's the word, like an arousal. The queen, the monarchy is able to arouse the people and give the people a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, someone to point to, and reveals their greatest potential. But the monarchy itself doesn't live for itself. It lives for the people. Everything it has, all the resources are poured into the people. King David is a prototype of a king, of what a king is supposed to be and what a king is all about. And I know seemingly there are some mistakes that King David made, but we explained in Talmud class he really didn't. He really did not make any mistakes. And we're going to get into that because the pasuk I want to, we're going to get into what a king is and what's unique about the Ashrae, because we're going to focus on the second line of the Ashrae. Something interesting. Ashrae is in alphabetical order. Look over here. Aramimcha, Alakai Melech, Aleph. Next pasuk. B'chol yoim avarechacha. Beis. Gadol Hashem hu ma'ed. Gimel. Dor la dor yishava. It goes through all the different letters. Each passage, each new sentence, each pasuk, as we call it, starts with it goes through alphabetical order. You'll see that often in other prayers in the Siddur. Keep your eye out for it. You'll notice, and that helps you remember how to say this prayer by heart. Okay, so let's go a little bit further. Okay, so the pasuk says, "Tehillah David," a psalm by David. Aramimcha Alakai Melech. I exalt you, my God, my King. Ba'avarcha Shimcha le'elam vad, and I will bless you. I will bless your name forever and ever. What's the difference between I will praise you, extol you, versus I will bless you? Number one, that's a number. That's my first question. Another question I have is I will bless your name. What do you mean bless my name? Bless me. Yeah, if I say, oh, Joe, that name is great. That name is beautiful. How much credit can Joe take? Joe didn't even probably pick the name himself. His parents probably picked the name. What is the name all about? La'olam, why are we praising God's name? What is that all about? La'olam vad, forever and ever. Okay, we'll get into a little bit of that. Why do you, it says I'll praise you. The next pasuk says, I will bless you every single day. Again, I will extol your name every single day. Every day I will bless you. And I'm sorry, the next, we'll finish off the pasuk. And I will extol your name every single day. What does it mean? I will bless you every single day, and I will extol you, praise you for eternity. If you're going to bless somebody every single day, doesn't that mean you're going to praise them for eternity, forever and ever? I mean, you're only going to be able to do it as long as you're alive. So for eternity, that's every single day for you. What's going on over here? So we'll go into a little bit of depth over there. So I want to explain something to you. I want to talk about the days of the week. Why are there 7 days a week? The world was created in 7 days. And we see some sort of cycle, right? We see that what God was saying, this is day 1 and this is day 7. That completes one cycle. It says in the Torah, Sheishis Yamim Asa Hashem, 6 days God created the heavens and the earth, and on the 7th he rested. 6 days God created the heaven and the earth. Why does it say it's like a seemingly incorrect way of that sentence is messed up. What do you mean? 6 days I created the heaven and the earth. It should say in 6 days I created the heaven and the earth. If someone said, "Oh, how long did it take you?" "Oh, I started this." Well, that's not a really good example, but really, this is the Torah is not the Torah didn't just mess up. Yeah, the Torah is very precise. It should have said "Bisheshis yamim." In 6 days, God created the heaven and the earth. Why 6 days? 6 days God created the heaven and the earth. So the Torah, the Hasidic masters explain like this: each day was its own entity, a day in and of itself. When you say in 6 days, you're kind of saying it's like consecutive, that the second day was really a continuation of the first day. And the third day was a continuation of the second day, and so on and so forth. But that's not true. Each day was distinct, and each day corresponded to a different attribute of God. What was created on the first day? On the first day, light. Light was created, as well as the waters. Water and light. What's unique about water and light? So we know from Hasidus class that it's connected to Abraham. Abraham was connected to the first day of creation. What is light? What's light all about? Light is all about giving. It brightens up your, it brightens up your path. You're able to see things more clearly. But light doesn't, what's unique about light, it doesn't differentiate. Light just shines. The sun just shines. I don't care who it's shining upon or what's going on. It could be shining upon a very horrible person. Yeah, it might give him an advantage to hurt somebody, but at the same time, it might also help somebody in a very good situation. Yeah, light, we're able to see and read and learn and share. So light is this concept of chesed, of giving. It gives. A true giver gives without taking into what's called cheshbon. We don't take into consideration who we're giving to. It just gives. By nature, it is a giver. And the same thing with water, which was also created on the first day. Water flows. Everything grows because of water. Water will come down and rain down on anything and anything in its path, unless there's some sort of blockage. Same thing with light, unless a cloud moves in front of it, in front of the sun. But never, it in and of itself constantly gives. It's chesed, undeserving kindness, and that's what Abraham was all about. In fact, the Midrash says that when Abraham was born, the attribute of God's kindness complained, whatever this means, which means the angels that carried out God's kindness. Basically, they complained to God saying, "We have no job in this world right now. Abraham is taking up all of our jobs." Interesting story. But that could also be somewhat problematic. Yeah, if somebody gives too much, they give it to people who aren't deserving of it. Yeah, a child wants a knife, but I'm a giver, so I'll give the child a knife. That's obviously not so good for the child. Like, child can harm himself. But that's what chesed is all about. That's what day one is all about. And God was telling you that I created the world, the foundation of the creation of the world, the head, the first day, it's founded on kindness, undeserved kindness. We didn't do anything to get God to create the world. God decided on his own, he had a desire on his own to create the world. So everything constantly flows, and everything's constantly being given, and that's why water was chosen on the first day, because water constantly flows. It has to flow unless there's an obstruction. Just like light, it constantly moves. God is saying, I'm constantly giving to you, whether you appreciate it or not. Chances are the blockage really comes from you. You're, some sort of perhaps an ego. I feel deserving. You forget the bigger picture. So that was created on day one.
Question.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it say that? Why doesn't it say let there be water? Like, why is it just there? It's just like right off the bat, it's just like, and the water was just like there, and then let there be light.
That's a great question. I can tell you one of the explanations for light, but for water, light, the whole point of light is revelation. That is what light is all about. And God, this was so to speak, God is then revealing himself like God is, the first step is a certain revelation, that there is a revelation of me. So I'm going to start with light, because light represents a revelation. But in terms of, to really answer your question about water, I don't know. It's a great question. I just want to explain, I just to touch on this point, because I find it to be fascinating, that I just said revelation, God revealed himself on the first day. God had to what's called make a contraction. I'm sure we spoke about this. It's called the tzimtzum. If you want to know, tzimtzum means contraction. If you want to know, we're coming up to Yutes Kislev, the 19th day of Kislev, which is the Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus. That's when Chassidus took everything to a new level. We'll get into it as time comes. The Tanya, all these different things. What was so unique about the Tanya and Chassidus? Why didn't it exist before? Yada, yada, yada. We'll get into that. But there was something called the Misnagdim, people who were against the Hasidic movement and Chassidus in particular. And the two camps were the Vilna Gaon and the Alter Rebbe. And these were dangerous fights. I mean, the Alter Rebbe was thrown in jail. It was based on a lie, because the Vilna Gaon's people, not the Vilna Gaon himself, but the followers of the Vilna Gaon, felt that they should do anything they can to try to stop Chassidus. Much like, we spoke about Yaakov stole the blessings through trickery, that sometimes in holy realms, the way we trick the animal soul, or we trick, we want to get mission accomplished, we'll do things through trickery. So there's sometimes it's holy to do that. And at tonight's class, by the way, it's all about lying. When can you lie and not lie? Through trickery, using trickery. So they felt they were doing the right thing. So there was like a holy reason behind it. Now, so they had a big disagreement. They didn't like Chassidus. And one of the major disagreements they had with Chassidus was something called, is it Tzimtzim Kipshutoi or Tzimtzim Loi Kipshutoi? Did God really, did he contract himself completely, or not really? In other words, was God, and I'll explain more what this means. If you were to ask them, is God in the bathroom, where you're not allowed to do any mitzvahs? If God is in the bathroom, they would have said, no, God is not in the bathroom. Was God involved in, God forbid, the Holocaust? I'm not saying everyone would agree with this statement, but I have heard it said many times by people who don't study Chassidus. God could not have stopped the Holocaust. Yeah, you hear such a thing. Basically, God, he created a world, and he gives, and he interacts once in a while. But in terms of hashgacha pratis, involved in every great detail of your life, every blade of grass, when it sways, it's done by a malach, an angel hitting it saying, sway, sway. They would say that's ludicrous. At the time, they would say that was ludicrous. And Chassidus says, Tzimtzum, no, God didn't truly contract himself. Now, let me explain something. When Albert Einstein wants to explain the theory of relativity, I know I've brought this example before. He wants to explain the theory of relativity to a 7-year-old child. Albert Einstein cannot explain the theory of relativity the way he understands the theory of relativity. It would be too much for the child. What does he have to do? He has to completely forget about, imagine you're trying to explain something very deep to somebody who has no concept of what you're about to explain. So you have to try to think, okay, how do they think? What information do they know? I want to take this concept, I have to forget the concept for a second and think about how are they going to, what do I need to say in order for them to be able to receive it properly? And that's called, and then you figure it out. You're like, okay. You start bringing examples, many metaphors to help them understand. Apple and oranges, yeah? Albert Einstein eventually will explain the theory of relativity using apples and oranges, because a 7-year-old child understands apples and oranges. That contraction, that removal is called the tzimtzum. We call that tzimtzum. Now, was that tzimtzum, so on the first day of creation, God revealed himself. Now, God couldn't reveal himself completely. He had to completely remove himself, called a siluk. And then in order for us to be able to handle the world, in other words, operate within the world and do mitzvahs, God had to remove himself. He had to have a contraction. He had to have a tzimtzum. So that would make room for us to have free choice and be able to make choices and do mitzvahs. Yeah, if the king is standing over you and telling you what to do all the time, and that, and within one moment he can flick his finger and have your head chopped off, you're going to do whatever he tells you to do. The problem with that is you're not changing as a person. It's so overwhelming upon you. It's put upon you. It's called your bottle. You're completely nullified. You're not changing on the inside, but you're going to do everything exactly how he wants you to do it, because at any moment I'll be killed. God didn't want that. God wanted you to change on the inside as well. So he removed himself, his revelation. He only allowed a small revelation of himself, a little bit, just enough to keep the world going. That's just enough for you to be able to not see him, and yet at the same time be able to find him. What the Misnagdim think, Misnagdim literally means the opponents of Hasidim, they think that God completely removed himself and he's still not here, but he interacts once in a while. Now, this is not a very common, people don't really think like this anymore, because Chassidus has made its way through the camps, through the great, even the descendants of the Vilna Gaon. But they believe that he was completely removed and he would only interact once in a while. And we said, no, it's only the appearance of a complete removal. It's simsim loy kipshutai. Which literally means not the literal meaning. We say tzimtzum, but not literally a tzimtzum, not literally a contraction. It's the appearance of a contraction. And on the first day of creation, God is letting us know that there's light. It's revelation that you could reach. What's unique about light? That light in and of itself is no entity. Light is only an expression of the luminary. Yeah, when we look outside and we see light outside, there's no substance to light, really. Light only comes from the luminary. That's all it is, an extension of the luminary. We just get a contracted, thank God, so we don't burn up in the sun, but we get a contracted form of the light. But it's really an extension of the luminary. We're like literally basking in the rays of the sun, in the sun itself. But thank God there's through myriad of things blocking it, we're able to handle it, so to speak. We're able to handle it. But nevertheless, it's nothing more than an expression of the luminary. That's all light is. Light of the sun, that is. So the same thing God is saying, on the first day I'm creating light, this whole world is nothing more than an extension of my essence, of who I really am. It's just going to be this appearance of, much like the light of the sun, you'll be able to handle it. But you really, if you study it and you get in the depth of it, you can go back to the luminary. We're a little bit over time, so I'm going to have to stop it. This is not so much on what I wanted to talk about, but it'll all come in. It'll all come in well. Does anybody have any questions? We'll continue this next week. We're going to go through the Ashrei prayer, and it's really the Ashrae we're going to see as a blueprint on how to approach life. And the reason why it's going to it says you'll get into Gan Eden and you have all these rewards. In other words, you'll be a refined person, is because it gives you the right tools in order to how to look at the world and how to look at yourself. And through that, you'll be refined. You'll be more of a refined person. You'll bypass Gehenna. Yeah, you don't have to go through Gehenna because you're going to be so refined anyway. You don't need to go through any purification process. We're going to get into that. We're going to understand, what does it mean? How does God interact with the world? Why do we praise God's name? Why not God himself? But what is a name? A name is really nothing more than an expression of who you are. On the one hand, a name is something very external. Everybody has the same name. Yeah, actually Elia, I think, is very unique. I don't know anybody else that has the name Elia. But if your name is Chaim, there's 50,000 other people named Chaim. But at the same time, if I look at you and I say Chaim, what does that draw? Your entire essence. Yeah, I don't refer to any particular part of your body. I refer to your entire essence, your entire being. Your entire being is encapsulated in the name Chaim, the name Joe. Yeah, and the name, yeah. So the same thing, we're going to be praising Hashem's name. We're going to understand what a name really is and how it's connected to being a king. Okay, with that, I'm going to conclude. Tonight, we're going to have Talmud and Cholent. Well, without the Cholent. Unless you come here to West Bloomfield, you can have the Cholent. There's going to be a class, and we're talking about what is lying. When is it okay to lie? At least that's what I was told. Okay, if you have any questions, just text me, and I will speak with you guys tomorrow.